addition, the left rail has the navigation elements where you can narrow down verticals, as well as the other interaction features.
So what happens if a person is both a recruiter and they have their own profile and they are searching for a job as well? Let's say somebody is in a capacity to recruit you and they want to find somebody with a particular experience kind of thing. So does the query segregate between the things? What is the intent of the user, whether they are finding somebody or whether they want jobs for themselves? Because if you start showing jobs, people who want people in this field, then how they
Okay, so the question was, how do we deal with different types of users? There might be recruiters who are looking for people for title queries, and there might be job seekers who are basically looking for jobs for these title queries, right? And let me talk about how we do intent detection and page construction, and I think that will make some of these ideas clear.
I have another question.
Okay.
Are you taking into account the profile or description of the company? Because we don't have Autodesk, for example. They do like CAD. So even if the job description doesn't specify CAD, a lot of times the company is about CAD.
Yes. So in this specific case, or in general for unified search, we are looking at unified search as a problem separate from finding the most relevant set of results within one particular content type or vertical. So what happens here is that for CAD, we do not show a company result, but there must be some company intent. For a lot of other queries, if you try Apple or LinkedIn or some other company names, you'll generally see a company hero slot, which is for satisfying the company intent, followed by other types of content. Now, based on the reason we do not see AutoCAD for CAD, for the query CAD here, is most likely because users are not searching for CAD and then interacting with the result for AutoCAD. So even though that might seem like a very reasonable result to put on the page, our data suggests that that is not something that users interact with. So how do things change in terms of relevance of results? When we look at unified search, it is primarily now composed of two parts. The first is, what is the probability that a content type is relevant given a user and a query? And the second part is, what is the traditional search ranking problem or the pre-unified ranking case, which is what is the probability of a document being relevant given a user, a query, and the content type they have already selected for the dropdown. So we use a combination of both of these probabilities and both of these signals to finally compute the relevance of every document and every result we show on the page. Now, in theory, we could compute these probabilities and these values for all content types and all results from each of those content types. But we do not want to do that because that becomes a scaling problem. As we add more verticals into search, that approach is not going to scale. Quite a few content types affect only a small fraction of queries, and it doesn't make sense to send the full query traffic to each of those. For those reasons, we do intent detection early, the first part of the problem. We figure out what are the candidate set of content types that are relevant to the user and query pair. And so I realize so coming back to the question around a recruiter and versus a job seeker. If you see both of these equations, and especially the first equation we're talking about, or the first formula we're talking about, the probability of a content type, that is dependent on both the user and the query. So if we think that for a specific user, when they are looking for software engineers, they're looking for people, that is what will get ranked higher. So it is not just the query, it is a combination of the query and the user. So coming back, we find the candidate set of results early, send the queries there, get everything back, and then do an optimization on top of it. What about the secondary components we saw in the screenshot on the previous slide? We are looking at secondary components and other types of content on the search result page as helping us in two ways. First, it helps us hedge our bets in terms of getting the intent right. If we cannot get the intent right, it gives us the opportunity to go for the second best, and for some users that helps. The second is this helps us expose content that LinkedIn has to users who were not looking for it in the first place. If people did not know that LinkedIn has groups that are very relevant to finding people for Hadoop, for example, then this exposes new content types and new ways of using LinkedIn to them. So it helps users discover as well as adds diversity to the page.
So how are you, so you said like you're not sending all the queries to all the verticals, right?
Yeah.
But the second part of the equation has got document given user query content type?
Yes.
Sorry, caching the documents or?
So we consider the documents. So you can see think of this as being composed of two parts, and if the first part of the score is really low, then you know that there's no way that that a document, or there's very less chance that a document can be so relevant that it will make its way into the final set of results. So that's the reason why. So for example, if you're searching for names, then the prior is very, very strong that you're looking for people, and it doesn't make sense to add anything else there.
On the left-hand side, you will show all the 5 verticals anyway. I mean, they're not necessarily shown based on whether there's 0 results or not. They're all shown.
Yes.
So what happens if my query is ambiguous? Let's say I want to search high achieving executives at eBay or at LinkedIn, and I wanted to hire them. So what will happen if I really give such an ambiguous query which doesn't match with any one of the verticals?
Finally, to be honest, the search and the ranking will be done by the individual verticals. So in this case, for unified search specifically, the bound on relevance is going to be the relevance of the underlying systems. This helps with diversity. This helps with exposing other content types. But if the query that you're trying would not have worked in people search, for example, then this wouldn't enable those queries to work. But you can think of, I mean, there are, I wouldn't want to go into too many details about future plans, but for queries like what you mentioned, there are definitely things that can be done at the rewrite level, at the unification and federation level, at the intent level, as well as on the vertical levels, to figure out how to actually analyze those and find the right results. But I would say that is a problem that we have specifically kept out of scope of unified search.
What if top results have got the same probability?
What if top results have the same probability?
If top results have the same probability, what do you do with this?
That is very.
Big gap, you can select it first, but if
That is it. Okay, so the truth is, we compute the max. It is going to be very, very unlikely for a query and a user pair for two verticals to have exactly the same probability. In general, something will win. And and of course, our code does not have bugs in that area.
Exactly floating point number or exactly in the range?
No, so this is all about which is the most relevant vertical, right? So in terms of whether a secondary makes its way on the page or not is a threshold problem. But choosing which is primary and which is secondary is purely ranking. So one of them has to win. But yeah, there can be verticals that do not make their way onto the search result page if they don't cross the threshold or cross the band of scores that they must. What we do in that case is as I mentioned, we are looking at feedback from the left rail. When we mess up, we do not show the right content types, and then users have to manually switch. So we take that signal into account, and then that should go better. So Daniel, can you summarize?
And I just want to, by the way, follow up that if that's true, we already know the best probability of being right is 50%. So we're probably wrong anyway. Just to summarize, I mean, what we're doing here, we're personalizing every search. We're leveraging the structure in the documents that we have, the different kinds of entities, members, companies, and so forth. We're trying to leverage structure, extract that from the queries. And at some level, we are most successful when we understand the structure inherent in our corpus, elicit structure in the user's query, and match that into a very happy family, rather than result in kind of a worst case where it's just bags of words and maybe numbers. We try to understand queries as early in the process as possible, because the more we can get from users and sooner, the better chance we have. One last pop culture reference: we fight the spammers that dig. I know, and you guys are tired. Public Enemy, 80s. This is, as LinkedIn has become increasingly popular as a platform, the way we're rewarded for this is by people trying to game us, and we have to fight that. And finally, and we're really proud to be able to talk about it today, because of the efforts made over the past months, we're seeking to unify and simplify the experience, helping our members find and be found. With that, thank you, and open for more questions. And we are hiring.
Dan, back to one of your first slides on query understanding.
Are you going to take the context slide up?
Oh, no. I'm just saying, you're referring to it.
Yeah.
Obviously you're saying you're doing queries and finding entities based on entities that you've already known from your structured data. But you also mentioned something about hidden markup models.
Yeah.
If you already basically know what entities are, what are you using them to know for?
Oh, so this, if you think of named entity detection, even when you have a gazetteer, right? Even when you actually know that there are a couple of things. One is that, like in our case of Mayo, Mayo can be part of an institution, the Mayo Clinic, or it can be someone's last name. It can even be a first name. In fact, I have a friend named Mayo. So the first off problem is text as input is not just because we know the entities exist, even just we know there's a text match for it, makes the probability non-zero of it being that entity, but it doesn't make it one. What we're doing with a hidden Markov model is going through, if you think of it, right, the chain of ways in which we could tag at the various places and ending up with a probability at the end that we've entered those correctly. It's a standard sort of tagging problem. It does help a lot that we actually know something about the priors of strings, the presence of a string in a name, in a company name, and so forth. That gives us a big advantage over training off of, say, Reuters initiative.
Can you train that off of your query logs?
We can use our query logs. We can use specifically our advanced search logs, which are practically golden data, and we can use our profile data. So we have a lot. It's really nice. I came in only to LinkedIn a little over 2 years ago, and a lot of the things that you're seeing now happened the past couple of years. But as Shakti was pointing out, that we're in a position to bootstrap off of data even from earlier interfaces, or from some cases entirely different features, in order to do this. So data recycling is very big for us.
A lot of this query understanding thing is programming for people and companies are right, not for jobs and events and those kind of things, groups and everything.
Jobs and groups can show up. I mean, there are two of the verticals that show
No,
up.
I'm talking about the query understanding part. The whole SFM query understanding.
Well, so if you think of jobs, I mean, some people, when they're looking for jobs, they might actually be interested in jobs at a company like LinkedIn. So it certainly shows up as something there, or they may be interested in specific jobs, like software engineering jobs, or they may want jobs with a particular skill. In terms of groups, in the same way, group topics are entities as well. So this applies everywhere. The thing to think about with query understanding, and perhaps it's a bit fast and loose conflating sort of overall query intent, the sort of type of content you're looking for, with the specifics of what the way the query is segmented into entities. This is across the board. I mean, this is the nice thing about having a somewhat closed world with the kinds of content that people interact with. It's not unique to people or companies.
So but I would assume that for groups and everything it's more or less free text search because the number of different query categories are not that many in groups. While in people profiles there is actually many good query categories that we have.
So yeah, in general, significant fraction of our searches will be over LinkedIn and LinkedIn entities. Job search, company search, parts of group searches. When someone searches for LinkedIn company group, that has LinkedIn entities, right? And the part of query understanding here is identifying from free text which parts of free text refer to these LinkedIn entities. The context doesn't matter so much there, as long as we can identify the right components.
I mean, I think it's a fair point that people curate their own profiles and companies curate their profiles to a larger extent than groups do. So we have more to work with. In the case of groups, a lot of our signal comes from analysis of the historical data, but it's still kind of important that if somebody's looking, if we think that their information need when we survey a group, that is part of something we do at the query level, or specifically the first part of what Shakti showed with getting the content type right. Brian, you had a question.
I'm going to come back to name search. I just tried searching for you, and if I make a typo in your name, and names are notoriously hard to spell, I can't find you. So do you guys do edit distance spell checking at all? I get a null page, and it's easy to misspell your last name.
I will admit that our current spell checking can use some improvements. I can't make any forward-looking statements, but there will be improvements. Yeah.
Ralph?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. No,
I'm curious about endorsements. Do you use them in profiling people, both searchers and targets that you identified? And do you do any kind of detection there? Because people get, if you look at my endorsements, I'm a machine learning person, and I'm not. And you would think that I'm a Python person, and I'm not. So I don't know why people keep endorsing this for me.
You know, I have to admit I'm a spammer, Daniel, and I added to my profile the endorsement, will you click on anything? And people endorse me for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the situation here is we look at a set of features, at a variety of features when we are doing ranking and such. Specifically about endorsements. When we are trying to, I'm not sure how much of this is things we have talked about before versus not, but just someone endorsing you is not the only source of information about whether you are an expert on machine learning or not.
I'll take go a little bit further. We are not, having 1,000 endorsements is not going to get you to the top of the rankings. We're well aware of a few things. I mean, you're endorsed by your connections, so clearly somebody with a lot of connections has a possibility of a lot more endorsements in some field. Your skills are indexed to that. That certainly matters. We know that you have that as a skill. We may even know that you have that as a skill even though you haven't told us yet if we're good at guessing. But endorsements are a nice, wonderfully viral feature that are getting users to help label each other. But we're well aware that they are not some kind of golden source of truth. And we're not that easily gained.
Most irrelevant part of profile.
It's what?
Most irrelevant part of profile.
Well, so the people have written about this. You can look to see how the skills you have are ranked by endorsement. And maybe you're in an unusual case if Python is above machine learning, although bear in mind, that you added Python as a skill if you're actually showing up on your profile, and that perhaps you're connected to people who don't know you pretty well, which is perfectly acceptable if that's how you like to connect. But I notice if I look at my own profile, the ranking of skills is mostly right. Karaoke is ahead of Java, which is appropriate. The only complaint I would really have is that my endorsements are favoring slightly more generic skills than the more specific ones. For example, I have fewer endorsements for faceted search than I do for, say, information retrieval, even though I literally wrote the book on faceted search. The reason for that is that most of my connections have no idea what faceted search is, and they do know what information retrieval is, and thankfully they actually endorse me for the thing they've heard of. So there's a bit of a bias there. But I think that lost in some of the noise of, can you get anything from these endorsements or so forth, is that I've, at least in my limited experience, found that the aggregate picture is telling. You have to bear in mind the obvious sources of variance, and then of course that you can only be endorsed by your connections. But no, this is not some way that people are gaming themselves at the top of the rankings.
I've observed that a lot of the endorsement bias comes in because if you visit somebody else's profile, either the top selects a few skills and say endorse, and people just click endorse. And I think that's where it's going to require so much money.
It's certainly, there are a lot of opportunities for people to endorse frivolously, but again, there's a mix. And we're well aware, this is the nice thing about having such a huge volume of over 1 billion endorsements is that we can do lots of fun analysis on it after the fact.
So do you reuse query results at all for performance reasons, or do you find that just having the internal data structures that you built up to the multiple advantage? So maybe that's a stupid question. Is that Google?
No, it's problematic to reuse query results because you mean query results for you, that you did the same query?
Yeah, but anybody did the same
But
query.
everybody's getting, if you look, the personalization makes that really tough because, I mean, maybe at the set level we can do that, but we can't do it at the ranking level, which is kind of expensive. So that's limited. I mean, we use indexes, and so by definition, there's some degree of saved work. That's what the indexing process does. But if you think about what it takes to get not only the rank results, there's more than that. The facets include network facets. Those also have to be computed, and I don't know, I assume in a crowd like this, folks are familiar with hit counters in Lucene. I mean, we have to actually, as we're going through, figure out as a facet that only works for you personally, who's first degree, who's second degree, who's in groups with you. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with saving some part of the work, but the reuse is limited.
I think we maybe better take a couple more questions and then wrap up.
How does a spammer know that they have been detected?
There's that Who's Read My Profile. You get to see how many people are looking at your profile. If that were to drop precipitously, you might surmise that your strategy isn't working. I'm not a black hat SEO, I just play one on TV.
What parts of the profile are really making a difference when it comes to being found? For example, you can add various different publications, and what parts of the news have to be used within the new kind of brand research that we're talking about? What's the advantage or disadvantage of weighing more emphasis on your profile on these parts, as opposed to picking maybe these keywords or other more noticeable parts that you associate better ranking with your profile?
So his question is basically how do you become successful as a profile spammer? No, not quite, but I mean, there's a slippery slope, obviously, right? And I'm afraid there's good SEO and bad SEO in that. What are the parts of the profile that matter? I think they're...
Well, say for example, you're a postdoc, you publish a lot of papers, and that's an important part of your profile that
Right.
you want people to see, right? As opposed to, I like swimming, and that's in the top part, but I don't like swimming, but I publish a lot of papers.
Right.
And I want people to find out on LinkedIn that I publish papers. So I don't want to spam, I just want to find people, I just want people to know that I publish papers. So how do I go, how much of that part of my profile is relevant in the modern jungle that LinkedIn is?
I'll offer a guarded answer, which is the following, because it's fairly evident. The parts of, if you think of the way your profiles are organized, you've got kind of summary, headline, your current job title, these sorts of things that are obviously kind of front and center who you are, your own name. Those, you have a limited ability to put what's in there. So what you put in there is much more likely to be the way in which you're found, and for that matter, the way you'll show up on the search results page. So if you, for example, want to be found as a software engineer, calling yourself a chief doohickey person is pretty counterproductive. And it's, there's a word of caution there that like people who want to look unique pay a price for that in terms of search. But the other thing, which is really important, is that we didn't talk much about the faceted search experience we have, but there are a lot of structured elements, and a lot of people who are looking for you might actually be finding you through the structured elements. So one of the most important things that you can do is complete them so that people discover you when they're looking for people who worked at some company, who worked at some company. Like, make sure that essentially you fill out all the means of discovery. But in terms of sort of prioritizing how you're found, put it in the highest signal fields. And those are things like your current name. You hopefully only have one, your current company, your current title, your headline. Think of it as, I can't reveal, and Shakti would kill me if I did, precisely what the ranking function is, but this is kind of common sense there. The other thing is, if you look at the Who's Who My profile, you can see which keywords are discovering you, and that's a bit of a feedback loop too. Because bear in mind, one of the reasons you may not be being found is that you're using not very different language to describe yourself than that of the people who are looking for you. That's something that kind of is a bit of trial and error. We'd love to fix that in terms of in the query rewriting process, because we don't think it should be something that people have to invest all their time in optimizing. But in the meantime, it never hurts to see that as a kind of a feedback on your own discoverability.
Okay, let's give the speakers another round of applause. Shakti can go back to work tomorrow and say he has hit the new high water mark for Bay Area search. You're the Bay Area search king, Shakti.
What was our official number?
What was it, 200? How many people do we have to accept?
There's 200.
200. You can look on the meetup page.
There were like 300 people that left in the middle of the talk.
If you wanted to speak to the speakers afterwards, I'm sure they'll ask a couple more questions. Oh, you can come to know.
Sorry, not the face recognition.
Oh, from where? Okay, because on the group, I thought I was like, okay.
I was I don't think I don't get any additional money to go on and so I just put it there. Oh, that's why it's not much problem at all.
No, I wasn't a startup, but somewhere Singapore, I don't know where.
I think I'm professional.
But I don't know. This is actually the first one but it might have been in those works where you were enterprise search conferences.
I was a lot of, maybe it's not.
Yeah, because I used to work, well, I didn't work for him, but I worked for Total Search, another Norway-based search for Microsoft Fast. I know that.
Yeah, I work for Avalon, so basically a lot of our folks, a lot of research companies.
Yeah, let me give you Microsoft Search. But I live in the state of Washington, and I basically, we had this month sold my condo.
Oh.
Basically get everything cleaned up there.
Oh, that's a nice place to meet you.
Yeah.
Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Hi, what do you guys read?
We just...
You know Avalon, don't you?
Yes. I'm just like, he looked, well, he looks
I've been to a lot of research conferences.
Yeah, he was our, we have been up in
Strata, I was doing Strata,
It's my first Bay Area.
Okay. We do one up in Redwood Shores sometimes, like some of our grants are kind of through on the winters and that one. What's really funny is I've got no resumes at all when I ask, and the solo someone like, no, screw you. Like here, like, oh my God.
Well, you got a very captive, focused audience.
So, right? Like, oh, this is old style, it's classic shirt. You know, making cars.
I've got a guy.
What are you saying now?
I'm,
Are you moved to permanent?
no, not yet.
Okay.
No, I'm just down from the, staying with my friend at conference.
Oh, he's a big guy. It's a different universe.
I, thumbnail, I was, close to Canada.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
I'm renting it back, so
Yeah.
I have to move right away.
That's good.
Yeah, I went, skiing last week, this week down there, all in. The weather's good, I went with the there. Pretty much by middle of April,
I'm really embarrassed that Lucid has this attitude that's a little inaccurate. Why keep spraying my ear like Avalon? Probably a company like you do so. If I can think of somebody on Avalon, the trouble is I think he's about the only person they have here. They're mostly in Dallas and Utah, but they are distributed. So, and you know, they do a lot of autonomy.
Slow motion.
As opposed to speed dating, it's slow dating.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, they actually do a lot of that kind of stuff. Everybody's real hot right now. VMware.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people there at all. LinkedIn too.
Just want to try.
Everyone needs search.
Yeah. Anyways,
I'm sorry Mark didn't come. He'll be buying this shit. You're too damn lazy to let me pick him up. See you later.
The dirty work is just to hire an AD student. You can do it. And when
I don't know
So then if I want to be the best friend, nobody was that. That's all I wanted is research. So they solved that first. That's good news. So like search engine, like all the we actually have our own index. So there's only 4 companies indexing the American web. It's Google, it's Bing, and index is us. We're actually Google indexing the site. That's correct. Well, so that's where all the money is. Last week I went to all trains. So we know there's a lot of search. So in 2007, a bunch of guys that were like, what do you do next? And the answer is, search is it's so hard that all these startups are starting and failing. And so let's do a search engine. How's it going? We don't know yet. It'll take us 3 years to do a basic search engine running. Then we get to try to actually do the thing. You can make all the famous things you want for your program on your phone. I'm just testing all the fantasy to see if they're actually pretty close. Suddenly, at our first experiment with things like slash blogs, there's blog CMSs, slash blogs, things that so you put these lists of websites, slash tags, slash sports, slash tag, either remade and sports. So the next year, we're going, wait, yeah, we should automatically start analyzing the every time you look slash tags, it gets rid of all the spam. So it's categories of Google like help. You're typing in Google, you're not typing in Latin words, you're fucked because the spammers include all of those results. Even if they go heavily along there, something and so we actually get good results. Yeah. So that changed our tactic to expand for search engine. But unfortunately, it still looks too much like Google, right? You type in a query, you get 10 blue links, right? And it has to be blue. If you change it, you really like it. Anyone test anything, pixel for pixel, then we're results. So we're different. So we got some uses. So look at those. Somebody was like, let's do this. We'll start with this and this, right? And if you've got all this space, you have a lot of results. How do you generate more results? Jonathan, instead of having 1 to 10, they want to have 100. Hey, wait, we have this. So, on contact one step, results. We actually need more than this category, right? So we type it out. It's food, resident company, music, we actually know that, so if you can play around with it for a while, release this tablet search report, and it does that, right? So it gives you all the categories. I'll type in junior. So we have different categories, so now we have here, African American slash tag, which is websites, civil rights, conspiracies. It turns out there are conspiracy theories out there shooting just like JFK's. People just as crazy. So we know what really happened. Who really killed Martin Luther King, and was it a CIA plot? Crazy stuff. surface all that successfully. Yeah. So the UI only works on the tablet. We're trying to get it down first. But since it shows all the categories, so it's usage on the tablet. People are frequently lying on the couch, and then instead of trying to figure out what is the capital of Romania, they just want to know something about Romania, right? Because they saw it on a TV show. Wait, Eastern Europe, and so they try to very easy to get around 1.8 words long. People actually spend a lot of time on websites actually looking around at all. It's like, oh, it's sort of people actually spend a lot of time back, and this is the incredible, right? Because on Google, people click on the stuff at the top, which is a lot of the page really goes to the second page. Which one choose the results? People will go 3 or 4 different things. And we'll click on something that's so it's very different as we go. And so finally, we discovered the innovation that we had hoped to find in 2007. The first one was probably more. Yeah, so if you have a tablet, the app is called ISIC, I-C-I-K. Android and iOS.
I used to work
So this is our old address. So we're now trying to do a couple blocks. Starlight is the one that parallels 101. Oh, sorry.
I'm actually
we do schemes about once a week.
Yeah, you don't see that. Okay, yeah. That's a good one. I don't have considering and catch it. Yeah, I'm out of So, what kind of
well, they got up in front of Congress and said competition is going away while I might use Bing or whatnot. So the good news is once they said that, we were related to so we buy that way it's better. You have a rule if you're to audit everything that you do. Crap, we can never pass this audit, so we go somehow. So I'm very aware of us, and they know that
Where is serving back?
so that's kind of yeah, so Pascal compilers they're working on it, and we had an innovative so that was called by Logic and called by Intel. And the next generation Xeon is going to be on the CPU. I don't get any money from it, but goddamn, this 5th generation.
How do you like that?
So what was the fun? I set up all the cluster, and I did all the guts of the cluster. I was sure like 64,000 nodes. That's a big machine. Even 1,500 nodes is small. Then I did the bit that does, talks to the database. So when a disk fails, the database abandons, the disk of the machine or whatever.
We're all being introduced.
Now I'm actually working on the product. So the type of query into ISIC and then it fires probably a hard time firing. ISIC, well, so that's an alternate way. It's biblical now, right? That's another way to test the rate.
Most cases,
Okay, so on the ISAC, transliteration isn't a very accurate one. So in Israel today, people who are named after figures are saying, it's a reasonably popular name. The good news is, since it's a biblically name, in very large cultures, people recognize it as a name. It can't be a bad word, right? It can't be an naughty word, because it's a name. So it's a very, I should always name my companies after biblical figures, because it's a very good plan. Yeah, so if you type in you type in a programming query, we have, it's easy first figure out the programming part of deciding if it's a NoSQL query or not. I built this thing called after the programming is selected, I require it's programming required, it's not about the stack. That's what we're paid for. So it makes sense for geeks look a lot nicer on Isaac. It seems like we actually know what's going on. Anytime you do query like Galaxy, so Ruby is a programming language in Windows anyway, but it doesn't fire query. Because that's a Galaxy phone. So it doesn't matter that 2/3 of the users will still fire the web itself. So instead of mostly the categories we use the web right? So the things about don't mention
search is a broader topic. So I also
things about Galliversions don't mention Ruby as line. Okay, so line is available.
now you have
Okay, so as a result, if you type in Ruby Mars Galaxy, you'll get some music answers and some line answers and some phone answers. Programming doesn't fire. I mean, actually, those are relevant results, the ones that they really are about. From a library named Galaxy or something like that. So, not using words is really like people who are trying to grab this categorization problem. It's never worked. And we're the first one to answer this. Try that one.
Enterprise search. I'll drop you a note to yourself with an extra. That would be great. Hold on. So you get, sure.
Is there anything to that? Lots of stuff like that.
You want to hold that?